Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erica Antone. I'm the WTS Philadelphia Chapter President, and we are honored to have everyone join us today for this presentation from the Lehigh Valley Annex portion of our chapter. First, I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize our chapter sponsors. At the Platinum level, we have AECOM, Burns, GPI, HDR, Jacobs, STV, Traffic Planning and Design, and Urban Engineers. At the Trailblazer level, CNS companies, Conrail, Gannett Fleming, Gilmore and Associates, Hatch LTK, HNTB, JMT, Michael Baker International, Pannoni, and WSP. At the Champion level, Envision Consultants, McCormick Taylor, RS&H, Sawinski Sullivan Architecture and Engineering, Stokes Creative Group, and Taylor Wiseman Taylor. At the advocate level, Arrow Aggregates, Aurora, Benesh, Bergman, CDM Smith, Global Program Partners, Kimley Horn, KMJ Consulting, Langen, McMahon, Mojeski and Masters, Remington and Bernick Engineers, Stantec, Trans Systems, and WRA. At the DBE level, we recognize Arrow Land Solutions, Bree and Associates, Dovetail Cultural Resource Group, Drive Engineering, Hunt Engineering Company, JBC, KS Engineers, Malik and Shear, NTM Engineering, Promatech, Rig Consulting, Rubinski Engineering, and Susquehanna Civil. And last are our agency partnerships, inclusive of Amtrak, the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission, the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, the City of Philadelphia Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability, Philiport, PNE, and PHL Airport, and SEPTA. At this time, I'm going to turn the program over to Anne-Marie Vigilante. She is the director of the Lehigh Valley Annex of our chapter.
Thanks so much, Erica. So welcome, everybody. We are thrilled to have you here to hear about how an anticipated $480 million influx of funding from the new bipartisan infrastructure law will impact the Lehigh Valley. So with us today, we have a few folks. We have the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission Executive Director, Becky Bradley. Becky has more than 20 years of experience in city, regional, economic development, historic preservation, and transportation planning, including experience in small town revitalization, roadway redesign, and trail construction. She has been the executive director of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission since August of 2013, is leading a $2.5 billion regional transportation planning program, as well as balancing the needs of the Lehigh Valley's rapidly growing population through the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission's county planning responsibilities. The LVPC in 2020 adopted Walk Roll Lehigh Valley, the region's first ever bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and in 2019 adopted Future LV, the regional plan, which is designated to serve as a blueprint carrying the region to 2045 and beyond. Also with us today, we have Paul Carafides. Paul has more than 19 years of experience in transportation planning. He spent 18 years at the Delaware Valley Planning Commission, where he focused on transportation operations, traffic incident management. Nearly a year ago, he joined the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, where he leads the Transportation Planning and Data Department. This includes working directly with the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study on transportation-related projects. And joining Becky and Paul is Hannah Malagio. Hannah joined the LVPC in March as its first ever program associate for community engagement after 7 years with Community Bikeworks, a youth development organization in Allentown and Transportation Alternatives Set Aside recipient. She's already jumped into a lead robust TIP public engagement campaign that includes virtual and in-person public meetings, radio shows in English and Spanish, and fully accessible online comment opportunities. So please help me welcome our presenters today. Just a few housekeeping items. We are recording the event, just to let you guys know, and it will be available to watch through various platforms. We will let the folks know when that is posted. And also, we will have some time for some question and answers at the end. So if you have questions as we're going through the presentation, please put them in the chat box, so the question and answer box there, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah to get us started. Hannah?
Thanks, Anne Marie. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
You're good.
Excellent, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program, known affectionately as the TIP. We appreciate your interest in the investment strategy for our growing region of 687,000 people. We encourage everyone to use the chat box during our presentation, and at the end, we'll have a period where you can unmute and we can all have a discussion together. I'd like to also encourage you to visit our website, lvpc.org/tip, to find a copy of our Tip Made Easy document and a comment form for any questions or comments you might have on the draft 2023-2026 TIP. The Tip Made Easy is a summary of the Transportation Improvement Program that includes much of the information we will be presenting, along with the detailed list of projects found within the draft TIP list. And now I'll turn it over to Becky to get us started.
Hannah. I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about what is the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study and how is that different than what everyone just commonly knows us as, which is the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. We're actually a two-part government agency for Lehigh and Northampton counties, just north of the Philadelphia region. So under a state law, we're the official county planning commission for Northampton County and for Lehigh County. So it would be like the Montgomery County Planning Commission, along with the Delaware County Planning Commission, plus we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the area. So what that really means is we're a federally designated organization that looks at the transportation planning programs, and then projects that will be funded using federal and state infrastructure dollars, as well as some local monies. So all of that information that we've heard on the news regarding the IIJA or the new bipartisan infrastructure bill, that's now being allocated out through this local TIP. But what the LVTS actually does, it's a separate board from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, is it really looks at how those transportation plans and programs tie into all of those things that make for a successful region. Our platform is really about transportation equity and making sure that we look at all modes equally. And really, we have a very strong philosophy that in order to be shovel ready, it has to be environment worthy and people worthy. So holding those things as our pillar for the decision-making process is critical to anything that we would do, whether it's this short-term funding plan that we're talking about today, our long-range transportation planning, our walk, roll, LV, active transportation planning, or working with our transit agency, the airport authority, and the like. Next. So you can move me forward, right, Hannah?
Sorry, I'm working on this. Apologies.
Okay, I'll keep going.
New to WebEx. Thank you.
Not a problem. All right. So the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study is actually made up of a broad series of interests for the region and the Commonwealth. ultimately supporting our broader goal, which is the public health, safety, and general welfare for Lehigh and Northampton counties. So we have a representative body that represents all 62 local governments, and that happens through Lehigh and Northampton counties' role in the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, both our District 50 office and central office are represented, as well as our transit agency, LANTA, our airport authority, and then the 3 city mayors from Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton as our largest urbanized areas. So all of us work together and have been working together really since 1961. We're one of the oldest metropolitan planning organizations for transportation planning specifically in the US. And so just to give you an idea of who is actually on the LVTS, it's made up of 2 committees. I call it like the House and the Senate. In the House of Representatives is where everything starts. It's really the planning committee, and that's the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study Technical Committee. And it's chaired by LANTA, Brendan Cotter, and then the Airport Authority, and then the LVPC is the permanent secretary. And then we have the 3 city mayors, Penndot Central and district offices. The committee that has the final say, it would be like our Senate. And that's our coordinating committee. And that is chaired by Northampton County Executive Lamont McClure. It's our vice chair is Mike Riebert, the Penndot District 5 executive. And then we have, you'll notice, the 3 city mayors again, the LANTA executive director, the Airport Authority executive director, and then we have folks from central office at Penndot as well. What is really, as well as the Lehigh County executive. So what's really important here to note is that we have some of the more powerful people in the Lehigh Valley on transportation decision-making, actually the most powerful people on transportation decision-making, and people who are very well-versed and can very well represent the issues of the region overall. And this structure has stayed roughly the same since we were founded, but it's important to have those key decision makers in the room when you're dealing with the size of the issues that we're dealing with and the scale of the funds that we actually allocate out. So in the next slide, what is this TIP that we're talking about anyway? Well, this transportation improvement program really is the fiscally constrained. So we can't go over the amount of dollars that were allocated out. High priority list for a 4-year program of highway, bridge, transit, and multimodal projects, all proposed to be implemented with federal, state, and local dollars. So all transportation improvement programs for all metropolitan planning organizations across the US are updated every 2 years. They really are short-term cash flow models for our long-range plans. And so it's a 4-year cash flow projection with specific projects targeted into that. But this is really updated every 2 years. And the beauty is we have a new federal infrastructure bill that allows us to further some of these goals that we've had planned out for a very long time. And so we're the designated body for that. The other thing I think is important for folks to know as well is even though we're setting out our short-term cash flow model for the next 2 years, every month there are actually TIP updates as projects are completed, as new projects can be moved forward more quickly. The funds are moved around within the framework of what is now under review to be adopted in the next couple of months. So how is this money allocated anyway? Well, first of all, Congress took the action and the president signed into law on November 15th, the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bills. We often call it the IIJA. And then the state, and that's usually about 80% of the total transportation dollars in America, not just for Lehigh and Northampton counties. The other 20% comes from a combination of funds, usually through the state budget and Pennsylvania Act 89, which is then programmed out in the state's 12-year program. If you notice, it's 3 of our transportation improvement programs. But what that does is it makes up that 80% match along with a share of local funds, whether that's from local governments, county governments, public-private partnerships, which we do a significant amount of here in the Lehigh Valley. Those funds then flow to the LVTS, which is what we're talking about, our regional allocation now, which then ultimately leads to construction. So why does this matter? Well, the TIP allows us to use federal funds. That's the most obvious and important way to look at it. But funding is not allocated in an arbitrary way at all. It's allocated out using a formula that the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation works with all of the metropolitan planning organizations and rural planning organizations across the state and the federal government to come up with a fair allocation of those funds to the region. And things like our population, how many vehicle miles are traveled, the amount of assets that we have, so miles of road, bridges. There's a separate funding bucket for things like transit. So transit has a special allocation that goes directly to those sorts of programs. So do things like the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program, which is additional money into metropolitan planning areas that allow us to do things like pedestrian, ADA accessibility, bike programs. And you see the renderings that Hannah and I have behind us. These are some of our longer range visions, not only for an equity community that bridges Allentown and Bethlehem, but for suburban communities as well, and how to make them more transit equitable in general. So these funds can be used for a variety of projects to then realize the series of goals that we have for ourselves region-wide. And this slide then shows how it all kind of flows together. So the long-range transportation plan, it's updated every 4 years, and it's a series of things. And in our case, we actually rolled the county comprehensive planning, so we could directly look at effects of the environment, housing, jobs, equity, air quality, all of these things that actually make a successful community, tie those land use decision making into our transportation decision making, which was an absolutely strategic decision that both the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, Northampton County, Lehigh County, and the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study made in 2019 to merge the land use and planning policy in with our transportation planning and policy, so we could make sure that we were allocating funds through this TIP process into investments that would meet broader goals. So that was last updated in 2019. It goes out to 2045. Projects have to be in that list in order to then be eligible for our regional transportation improvement program. But then the Penndot's 12-year program, which goes from 2023 to 2034, is kind of that medium range project list. So it takes all this, the Commonwealth's needs, all of our needs as regions, whether it's the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, LVTS region, or other places like the Delaware Valley, for example, and rolls them into the state's plan along with their goals and objectives and the separate funding that they have. And then it goes then out to the regions. Paul, I think it's over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. It's a lot of information, a lot of stuff going into the TIP. And as you can see on this extremely busy page, there's a lot of effort that goes to get this thing to the finish line. So as you can see, we kind of started the process on June 29th of 21 when Penndot issued their financial guidance documents, which is basically the playbook for developing the TIP. That's what we run off. So from that time and ending on December 6th, 2021, the LVTS held, multiple public meetings to analyze the current TIP, identify completed projects that would need to be carried over to the new TIP, as well as identify any new projects from the long-range transportation plan that could be added to the TIP. So then during the LVTS meeting on December 15th, the draft TIP was developed and pushed on to Penndot at that point for review.
I think
And
that's
during
an
April of
important point
22,
here.
oh, yeah.
That Paul, that we really want to get across to folks is notice that the president signed the IIJA into law on November 15th, and by December 15th, literally within 30 days, the LVTS had responded with how we would start thinking about the allocation of these new federal funds. And time is of the essence in the Lehigh Valley. Not everyone is aware of this, but for those of you who are not, I wanted to let you know that just in the last 6 years, we have had over 27.3 million new square feet of industrial approved in our region. And just in the first 4 months of this year, we've seen an additional almost 8 million new square feet proposed to local governments by the private sector in transportation-based business. We have the highest new rate of new freight facility growth in the United States of America right now, higher than Houston, Atlanta, or even the Los Angeles Inland Empire of new freight facility development. And some of our projections for what the private sector are making for our region is that we're going to continue in that position at least through the end of the year. So we really are in a great period of boom related to transportation. So tailoring those investments and not letting any of the dust settle is absolutely critical, making sure that we can rise to the occasion of what's happening here.
No, that's 100% true. And again, that's where, things like Future LV, combining the comprehensive plan, the long range transportation plan really comes together, the land use and the transportation planning side. So as we continue through the TIP development, last month, the interagency air quality conformity began along with the environmental justice consultation, and that all wrapped up at the end of April. And then just recently on May 2nd, we started our public review and comment period, which we are currently in now. We have 3 virtual meetings that we are holding. We had one this morning. We have one on May 17th and May 18th. And then, thankfully, we're starting to march out of the pandemic. We're able to have an in-person public meeting on May 19th to really get out there. Along with being on the radio, as was heard earlier, WDIY and Spanish-speaking radio coming up in the next week or so. So we're really getting out there and trying to touch as many people as we can. And then at the end of the month, May 31st, the public review comment period ends. So our hope with all that is that on June 15th at the LVTS meeting, we'll be adopting the draft TIP, then coordinating with Penndot for their submittal to FHWA and FTA, with anticipated approval from them in September, and then an October 1 starting point, 2022, of the new draft TIP. So leading into the draft TIP and a lot of what Becky was speaking about earlier with Future LV, which is our long-range transportation plan, a lot of all this work starts there. We have project selection criteria that was used at that point to get all these projects into the long-range transportation plan, which is step 1 of being eligible to be on the TIP. So through that, multiple pieces need to be there, safety, asset preservation, mobility, these partnerships and the support of the region and something that is regionally, important, something that helps all the folks in the Lehigh Valley. So working through all this criteria is what really gets the whole TIP process moving, starting with the long-range transportation plan. Which then leads us into performance measures. So the 23-26 TIP is based on 3 federally set performance measures, which obviously set goals and targets for performance-based planning and programming, which is used by the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study and all its planning partners. So the performance measures are designed to reduce injuries, save lives, and better manage maintenance of the region's transportation network. So in order for the transportation performance measures to achieve these desired results, you have to go through this process that you can see on the image. While there are different targets for performance management, the FHWA rule establishes a set of performance measures for Mpos to use as required by federal law. So performance management is closely connected to the strategic goals of the US DOT strategic plan, with prominent emphasis on safety and infrastructure. In preparation for TPM implementation, both FHWA and the state DOTs have undertaken steps to align resources in support of these goals. So the draft tip includes performance measures designed to reduce injuries, save lives, and better manage the region's transportation network. So we have our three performance measures. PM1 is the safety performance measure, which is 5 safety performance targets, which have been established and are updated annually. The measures are based on pressures that result in fatal and serious injuries, and the targets assist the LBTS in addressing areas of concern. PM2 is the pavement and bridge performance measures. They apply to both pavement and bridge condition and are only applicable to the NHS system roads and bridges. Conditions are rated as either good or poor and provide targets that are consistent with Penndot's asset management objectives of maintaining the system in a state of good repair. And then PM3, which is the system performance measures, with number 6 up, which assess performance of the NHS system, freight movement on the interstate system, and the congestion mitigation and air quality improvement programs. The LBTS and Penndot continue their efforts to ensure that the TIP and the long-range plan are developed and managed to support progress towards the achievement of these statewide system performance targets. So really our goals with all these performance measures is to collect data and target transportation investments to improve the system, with the end result of a project selection process that is rooted in data and analysis to enhance transportation system performance. So with that, each and every project also must meet federal air quality conformity standards once it has been selected for the TIP. Pollutant emissions are projected through travel demand modeling. The Lehigh Valley is required to perform travel forecasting to determine transportation network demand, where the transportation network demand is then evaluated to conformity under the 2008 8-hour ozone national ambient air quality standards and the 2006 24-hour national ambient air quality standards. This evaluation is designed to ensure that federal funding goes to projects that are consistent with air quality standards. So as I mentioned earlier, an air quality conformity analysis was conducted on projects that were deemed air quality significant contained within the draft plan to ensure implementation of these projects would not contribute to a worsening air quality in the region. Next, we'll take a look at our online, we'll quickly look at the projects and then our online resources. So here in the next slide, I'll just keep going until we get this set up. As we heard earlier, the draft tip will comprise of more than $405 million invested directly into the Lehigh Valley. Projects on the tip are consistent with statewide and regional long-range transportation program, and all projects that use federal aid funds must be listed in the tip. The Lehigh Valley Transportation Study tip projects are categorized, as we can see, in the following options: bridge projects, traffic management projects, roadway reconstruction, roadway expansion projects, trail and bicycle facilities, transit expansion, and then the transit tip for Atlanta. Next, we'll take a really quick look at a static map that we have of all our projects. This is your basic map that shows you where all these wonderful tip projects are. Each one of them is numbered, which coincides with our Tip Made Easy document, so folks can easily take a look at the map, see where projects are located, and then get some more information, especially the ones that are close to them. So next, we'll have Hannah go to our website real quick to take a look at our online resources that we have associated with the tip.
One thing related to the map too, it's not just a static map. I think what people should really take away from that is that there are projects literally all over the Lehigh Valley. And that was really an intentional decision that the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study made to make sure that we were trying to address system-wide need as it related to the tip overall. And I believe Hannah's going to show us, we do have that static map in an interactive format online as well.
Yep, we're going to bring that up in just a second. So as Becky mentioned earlier, we have, and I kind of briefed on, we have this great document called the Tip Made Easy. here. We have it in this really cool format. Now you can use it and it looks like you're opening a book and reading, and provides some really, really great information. You know, we've kind of condensed the tip into this easy to read and understand format, you know, to really provide accessibility to all the public in the Lehigh Valley. So they can take a look at this, understand what the tip is, know what's happening. And then at the end, we also have a full listing of all the projects that are associated with the tip. There you go, bunch of wonderful spreadsheets, but they give, you know, funding amounts and a small informational brief on each project. And then as was scrolling down, since we are in our public comment period, we have a public comment box. So folks can go on, take a look at all our great information and leave us a note or a question. A little further down here, as Becky mentioned, we have an interactive version of the tip map, which again, you can scroll around, you know, zoom in, zoom out, click on any of the pieces to give you a little bit more information. You know, the orange boxes are all the bridge projects we have in the region, so there are quite a few. And it gives you a brief synopsis of each project, so it's a great way to folks to get some more information and to see where all the projects are located. There is also another button on that main page that, here we go, that was it. Shows us how else we can get involved. So there's, as I mentioned earlier, multiple other public meetings coming up. We have a few more virtual and even an in-person meeting. So there's plenty of opportunities for everyone to get involved with transportation in the region, which is extremely important for everyone to be a part of the process. So at this point, I will kick it back over to Hannah.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen here. Bear with me. I appreciate everyone's patience as I learn how to operate WebEx. All right. Here we go. Oh, goodness gracious. Not sure why it always puts me in presenter mode. All right. Well, sorry, everyone. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about the public meetings that we have coming up. So we have 2 more virtual public meetings coming up next week. The first on Tuesday, the 17th at 4 p.m., which is a public meeting specifically about the tip, talking a lot about what we've discussed here and taking comments from public folks across the valley. There's also a meeting of the technical committee of the LVTS at 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, the 18th, that everyone is welcome to join. And then we have an in-person public meeting coming up next Thursday at the Fowler Center in Bethlehem on May 19th at 7 o'clock p.m. There are also publicly available printouts of the tip and the tip made easy available here at our offices at Penndot District 5, the Atlanta offices, and the Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton Public Libraries, as well as at lvpc.org/tip as we showed before. So, you know, we're always looking for more comments, questions, things like that. We want to hear from everyone across the Lehigh Valley, regardless of race, religion, gender, identity, disability, and socioeconomic status. So please, please, please feel free to share about the tip within your networks, both personally and professionally. Anyone who lives, works, or plays in the Lehigh Valley has a right to a say in our transportation infrastructure system. And so with that, we're going to open it up for questions.
Thanks, Hannah. So yeah, folks, if you have questions, please type them into the chat box and we will get them answered. So I'll give you a minute here to type.
Well, people are putting in questions. I know we didn't talk a lot about specific projects that are included in the tip or continuing from the current tip into this new draft tip. And I know, Paul, we've had, significant discussions with LVTS about, what projects we should move forward. Maybe you could share with folks some of the things that the IIJA did that allowed us to advance some of those key projects and tell folks a little bit about some of them.
Sure, Becky. You know, the IIJA bill, for the most part, was a lot of continued funding. So a continuation of what was going on with some additional funds. I believe for the Lehigh Valley is about $80 million over the next 4 years, which seems like a lot, but when you break it down, it's not quite that much. But it did allow us to pull some projects forward that were going to be completed in some out years. So we have the 309 and Tillman interchange. You know, we were able to fully fund construction with anticipated completion, you know, from 2023, which was pulled forward from anticipated completion of 2026. 309 Center Valley interchange, final design was moved forward to 2023 from 2024. 309.
That's a new one.
Yep.
That's a new interchange, and the Tillman at 309 is is basically a redesign and reconstruction of a very unsafe interchange.
The IIJA bill was you know, really helped us be able to move some of those projects forward and get them done much sooner than was previously anticipated, which is fantastic for the region. There was let me just see what else. We had Meadows Road Bridge, another important bridge in the region. You know, construction's fully funded with completion in 2024 instead of 2025. So there was multiple projects that we were able to really pull forward into closer years to complete through the IIJA bill. It also allowed.
And that's a small one too, right, Paul? I mean, Meadow Road is really a local bridge, but an important connector between.
Exactly. It's a high priority in the region. So we were able to kind of pull that forward and really get that project moving. We're also able to add a few new projects, which is, you know, fantastic in itself, as many projects are a continuation. You know, there was with the IIJA bill, we were able to add some new projects, including a Fullerton interchange from 22 project, which is very important to the Riverside Drive grant, which, you know, is a huge multimodal project, grant that the LVPC won earlier or late last year, thanks to all Becky's hard work, along with another US 22 191 interchange project and a few other interchange improvement projects that we're able to add to this current tip, which is great for the region.
So we have a question here in the chat box. Can you discuss how you're accommodating the freight boom and still considering the environmental impact? Great question.
Oh yeah, county planning question. Well, first and foremost, the beauty of us being a metropolitan planning organization and having the same staff doing the county planning reviews is that we get to do significant review of transportation impact studies and land development plans early in the process as any development is proposed as a county planning agency. So the LVPC handles that. But obviously, we have the same staff between LVPC and LVTS. So we are able to make significant comments as folks go through the land development process on everything from driver lounges and driver facilities to truck parking to things like snow scraper tools on the tops of tractor trailers. Things that actually will help the facility remain viable and be able to operate efficiently. Truck drivers are not in the best of conditions, especially because of limited hours that they have to operate. And if they go over those, they can be fined. If they don't have places to go, they're not allowed to arrive on the site beforehand or stay after. They're forced out into residential streets, into commercial areas. They have to use the bathroom on the side of the road. That's not an optimal condition for them or for anybody else. And so we've created some pretty in-depth partnerships and even did a truck parking roundtable in 2020, believe it or not. August 2020 was virtual, to address some of those conditions of operations. On the environmental side, we actually do have stormwater review authority under the county planning agency component of what we do at the watershed level. And we have 16 watersheds in just the Lehigh Valley. So we are able to go beyond what the county conservation districts can do with on-site and post stormwater construction related to the site itself, and look beyond to the watershed level. So we do those reviews and provide significant comment on those, and that's not advisory, that's actually regulatory comment that we provide. But we've been working very significantly, and I wish I had popped that screensaver up behind me related to this question. But we do a lot related to green infrastructure. And that again gets back to the fact that we are a county planning agency. So we're a bi-county planning agency, so we can work on things specific to air quality and tailor that with things like traffic management technologies, which are then tied into the TIP, which Paul knows better than anybody about how we can reduce idling time and those sorts of things to keep our environment as healthy as possible. But the truth is when you have more people, because our population's been increasing by 4,000 to 6,000 people per year, steady for 60 years. We've been a growing region now for longer than I've been alive. And it's been sustained, but we are at a point where we're a solid medium-sized region, moving into a large-sized region. So as a result of that, we have a lot more development. We have a higher level of urbanization. We're seeing now higher levels of density. And so looking at things a little bit differently through an equity lens, through an environmental lens is critically important. At least I've got the suburban illustration behind me, but we work in green infrastructure wherever we can to every transportation project and to every land development where we can as well. We've even looked at things like animal migration corridors because we're incredibly rich in natural resources, including our birds. And migratory animals. We're a major bird of prey migratory path, one of the most well-known in actually the world. And so you see, right now is a great time of the year. It starts about right now. You see bald eagle, golden eagle migrations, peregrine falcons, other protected species coming through the area. So as we urbanize, those become critically important. So keeping as much green in the valley, that's what we're known for, is important. And we're able to really do that, less so through the TIP and more so through the land use planning that we do through the county planning agency, but then being able to dovetail those improvements related to the transportation system through the TIP and the long range plan.
Great, thanks, Becky. We have a few more coming in here. Do you anticipate a good spread amongst the projects between rail, transit, bridge, bike pedestrian, etc. type of projects?
I think we do the best we can given the limits of the buckets. We call them buckets. The federal government sets limitations for certain pots of money or buckets of money. So, you can't use transit dollars to pay for road projects, for example. You don't use bridge money to pay for road projects. But what we really are committed to doing, along with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, I have to give them a lot of credit for this. This started several years ago under the previous Penndot Secretary Richards, who's now at SEPTA, and has continued through the current Secretary Yasmin Gramian. But there's been a focus on this idea of Penndot Connect. So going out into the communities, working through the Mpos often, through number of you as consultants. I know you've worked on Penndot Connects projects as well, and asking, okay, is there a trail connection nearby? Is there a school nearby? Do we need to improve the ADA accessibility in this location as part of this road improvement? And so we're able to actually do some more multimodal type projects as a result of coordinating with Penndot and then leveraging those goals, policies, and actions in future LV, the regional plan, which is our long range transportation plan as well. So I would love to do more, especially on bike and ped and rolling ADA accessibility infrastructure, if we could get more funds for that. There is a slight increase in some of those funds through the new bipartisan infrastructure bill, but I would ultimately like to see more. So one of the things that we do in that regard is we partner through what we have is a local conservation landscape group, Lehigh Valley Greenways. It's actually through the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And we work with them on allocation out of trail dollars. We also work with Penndot and the Pennsylvania Department of Community Economic Development on allocation of multimodal transportation grants to help make sure that those are dovetailed in with the regional plan and that we're leveraging dollars where we can. So something might partially be funded through the Transportation Improvement Program and then partially funded through another state program. And so we're very strategic about that in our role as a metropolitan planning organization to achieve these broader goals. One of the things that we did do last time too, which I'm super proud of, and talking about mode split and really trying to reinforce transportation equity and in the region, is we actually have a health in all policies resolution that was adopted by the LVPC and the LVTS. So making decisions based on public health, which ties in that environmental component, access to jobs, schools, work, medical facilities, other sorts of things is important in all of that as well. And we designated some of our trail system. We have over 400 miles of existing trail today and plan to go up over 600 miles as actual commuter corridors. So that then allows us to leverage more dollars into those multimodal facilities as well. And can you tell I'm really into the multimodal facility?
Well, Becky, with that, do you, this is just personal note, so DE&I is obviously something that is a focus in all the professions and industries. You know, in terms of the projects and the planning process, you know, do you all take that into account?
Yes, we do. In fact, this is one of the things that I know Jill Seitz, who is a senior community planner in our county planning section, is really, really proud of. And I know I'm really proud of it too, is when we did the long range plan back in 2019, we actually in 2018 did our first ever region-wide equity analysis, and it's based on 14 factors. Everything from educational attainment to access to a personal vehicle or transit. And you can find that on Data LV at lvpc.org if you want to look at it. We keep that fairly up to date. But we actually use that as a foundation along with climate action for future LV, the regional plan, which again, that long range transportation plan, got to meet those equity metrics in order to be funded through the TIP, because you couldn't even made it on the list unless we could see a net benefit from DEI or climate action.
Great. So folks are chiming in here. Is there a funding through the TIP for electric charging stations for EVs? Good question.
This is one of those new things in the IIJA that you hear a lot on TV, but it's not what people really want to know at the local level. So the funding in the bipartisan infrastructure bill is actually to states, and it's for states to develop electric vehicle charging plans statewide so they can build out a network. It's very similar to what was done back in the Eisenhower era when they were developing the interstate highway system. They started with the nation overall and figuring out what that electric charging grid could be. And that's what they're working on now. And then we're hopeful that once that's done, and Penndot is well on its way in that. In fact, they were working on specific corridor plans for things like I-80 and I-78. 78 is in the Lehigh Valley, and we connect to I-80 just right on the fringes in two locations to our region, one over in New Jersey and then one just north of us in the Poconos. But you know, those plans will be coming out. Locally, we're working with our electric service providers to even see if we have a grid that can handle the increase in the amount of electricity that's going to be needed. Every year, demand for electricity as we have more and more devices and things is increasing across America. And there was a really good article in the Wall Street Journal actually over the weekend about a shortage of the amount of electric generation that there's going to be in the US. And the IIJA starts to tackle that at the federal level as well. So it's a long way of saying we're getting there, but we're working with our partners as they build out the plan for the larger network, feds on electric generation along with the private sector, states related and with the federal government on the larger vehicle charging network. And then in future transportation improvement programs, you'll start to see that deployed out, I would say over the next, 5 to 10 years for sure.
Great. So we have one more question here. How does the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission work with adjacent MPOs?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, in a couple ways. I'll start with inside Pennsylvania first. We have cooperative agreements first and foremost with our immediate neighbors, whether that's the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission or the Reading Area Transportation Study, which is also the Berks County Planning Commission and the like. We just entered into a, is it 5 or 6, Paul, MPO partnership for freight?
5.
It's 5.
Yep.
We just formed the Eastern Pennsylvania Freight Alliance, which is the Northeast Pennsylvania MPO, which is basically the Poconos, the Lackawanna, Luzerne, or Scranton area MPO, the Lebanon County MPO, and the Berks County MPO as well. That kind of creates that I-80C, 81, over to 78 bordering New Jersey. And we're in the process of awarding a contract for a preferred consultant to do a comprehensive freight infrastructure plan because freight knows no boundaries. The other thing that we are involved in very heavily is the MAP Forum. It's a Metropolitan Area Planning Forum. That is where we actually have an agreement to work cooperatively with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, which is basically all of the northern part of New Jersey, NIMTIC, which is the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, which is the New York City Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Orange County, New York MPO, and then 5 Connecticut MPOs to work on mega regional transportation issues, especially around freight and the environment. A lot of people don't realize, but the Lehigh Valley is very much connected to the Port of New York and New Jersey. It's one of the reasons why we've had such strong freight growth into our region. And then we also have our most in-migration of new people from the New York metropolitan area. So understanding that and understanding our inherent connection to North Jersey and New York, and then points north and east of us with our Connecticut partners is critical to the U.S. economy at this point. So we've entered into formal transportation planning partnerships with them and have even done some things on truck parking, and we're working on some other things related to freight mobility, air quality, and equity now.
Thanks, Becky. We have a few more here. Are there set-asides in the tip for bridge owners to deal with emergencies or unexpected bridge failures?
Yes, we actually have it in the current tip. It's we call it the climate change line, loosely inside the office. And I'll give you a perfect example why that's important. Last year, Hurricane Isaias, it was a tropical storm by the time it hit the Lehigh Valley. But the western part of the Lehigh Valley and Lehigh County got an insane amount of rainfall within just a couple of hours that knocked out a handful of bridges and roadways. Some of them are still closed. We've seen a huge increase in the amount of landslides and other things. And so 4 years ago, well, actually 2 years ago, LVTS decided, along with Penndot, who's part of LVTS, to really set aside some funds for that. One of the things that we're doing in this, we're hoping to do in this current draft tip or the update of the current tip, is set aside a specific funding for counties and local governments for those smaller, kind of off-system bridges that are critical to local movements and even maybe even local businesses and jobs that wouldn't normally get funded in the larger regional pool of things to address things like climate action related to the increased amount of rainfall, the increased intensity of rainfall, and the increased frequency of it.
Okay, it looks like we have two more here that we can get to. Do you foresee any issues with the influx of funding versus the current available workforce, both in the design world and the construction world?
Well, I mean, people are moving here quick. We've definitely seen a change in our commuter shed for sure. And even during the pandemic, we're getting office construction because of just the growth in population here. And it's not really on speculation. It's being built related to specific jobs and especially our manufacturing sector, our corporate office clusters, especially related to medical, and then corporate office related to manufacturing, whether it be Air Products or B. Braun, have expanded significantly. They wouldn't do that unless they had the workforce to expand and to grow that workforce. It's one of the strongest things that we've been focusing on. And in fact, we just entered into a partnership with our workforce board, Lehigh Valley, or what we call the WIB, the Workforce Investment Board. And we have a shared economist data scientist position now to then tie that land use transportation in with the actual workforce. And his name is David Jan. He just started here like a month ago. So that's how we've gone from, yes, we have a lot of employees right now. We foresee that we aren't going to have as many employees as we need. Our private sector partners are telling us that. So we're trying to get out in front of that and partner with agencies that can help us close the loop on those issues.
All right, so you know what? We have time for one more. I know we're at the 1 o'clock hour, but we have one more question that we want to throw out there. As part of the bill, there appears to be funding under the Congestion Relief Program for microtransit systems. Is LVPC going to make this program competitive, or will Lanta be the responsible party for this program?
We're working on that now. I am a longtime Lanta board member, in full disclosure. I've been a Lanta board member since prior to even joining the LVPC, LVTS staff. So we'll be working through those issues in the coming months. I mean, microtransit is a huge deal, and I think we've all been working towards that. One of the things I think that I'm the most excited about, it's at the centerpiece of the long range plan, but it's where good land use planning ties in with really good transit planning, and that we're able to deploy as part of this new TIP, is the phase 1 of our enhanced bus rapid transit system. We cannot support a passenger rail system internally. We just don't have the number of people and density yet. It'll be coming, but we can move towards that. And using EBS and BRT is a great way for us to start to set aside the right of way, make pedestrian, ADA, and bicycle improvements along key corridors that link with jobs, people, housing, and the like. And so actually Lanta will be deploying out its first portion of that July 1 with the new boards.
Great. Well, like I said, we're at the 1 o'clock hour now. So we want to thank all of you, Becky, Hannah, Paul, for doing this presentation for us. A lot of information, a lot of great information. A lot going on, and it's exciting to hear, right? And for you folks, thanks for joining us. If you have any further questions, I'm sure Becky, Paul, or Hannah would be glad to respond. You can reach out to them. Also for WTS, if there's any interest in chapter memberships or any corporate sponsors, please take a look at our website, or you can get in touch with myself or Erica. We'd be glad to get you involved. So with that, enjoy the sunny afternoon, and thank you all again. Becky, Hannah, Paul, great job. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.